go heavy and let gravity pull it down. Your shoulders drop. Your hands rest fully in your lap. Your feet are flat on the floor. And we begin with 3 deep breaths. In and out. And in and out. And in and out. And now just go ahead and breathe normally. You don't need to try and deepen that breath. Just let your breath come. One may be short, followed by a long breath. Both are okay. But you take your attention and turn it back onto that breath. You kind of ride the waves of the breath. The best way to do that is to feel the breath being drawn into your lungs and your belly. You feel your belly rise as you breathe in and fall as you breathe out. Rise as you breathe in and fall as you breathe out. And again, you don't need to judge that breath. You don't need to be thinking, I should be breathing more relaxed. I should be breathing deeper. And the trick you'll find oftentimes is if you let go of that breath, let go of that judgment, that feeling you should be breathing a certain way, and just let yourself breathe and watch that breath. You'll notice that on its own your breath starts to settle. Although at first it may kind of chafe at the fact that you're watching it, that it's starting to slow and grow deeper. More than your breath, I think your thoughts and your emotions are the ones that really kind of don't like that. They don't like not having full reign. You're paying attention to them, but you're not giving them the attention or the reaction they want. You're not keeping them alive. In the same way, you're just watching your breath and thinking, breathing in, breathing out, without the editorial opinion that that was a good breath, this was a bad breath. And you can do the same with your thoughts. Just kind of watch them going by like clouds passing through a blue sky. There's a thought. There's another thought. And you don't need to judge those either. This is a bad thought. This is a good thought. It's just, this is a thought. And you'll find they come and go, just like the breath as you breathe in and breathe out. Thoughts arise, and then they just dissipate. I like to think of them, as I say, like watching clouds go by. But really, if you've ever watched clouds closely, watch some time at the edges of the clouds. You know, it's fun to look at them as though there's something lasting and think about what they look like. But it's really interesting to just watch the edges of them. You start to realize that those clouds are constantly changing. They're coming and going all the time because there's not much to them. In the same way, there's not much to our thoughts. They come and go. They come into being and seem firm and real, just like those clouds do. And then they start to dissipate, can be blown away by a slight wind. So you watch those thoughts. We talked a few weeks ago about what it's like to watch those thoughts, especially the negative ones, and to not fight them, to still be aware of what they are. You might realize that you're beating up on yourself or criticizing someone else. And you don't need to tell yourself, I shouldn't be doing this. You just notice that. And by not giving them that energy, by giving them your full attention, they will start to dissolve too and can't hold that power over you that they might have. You don't keep them alive or keep one thought leading to the next thought. It's so easy when you're on one of those rolls about, I'm a bad person because of this. And then you just start going down the line. Well, then there's this, and there's this. This is why I'm a bad person. And we can't demand that emotions come up when we're doing this exercise. I think it's more likely that thoughts always are churning in the background. So many of us think what this practice is about is learning to stop those thoughts. But your mind just continues making them, just like your lungs continue breathing air. But sometimes you're fortunate enough that a strong emotion or feeling comes up. And you can practice with that and be aware of that just like you are with the thoughts. With knowing, first of all, that they'll arise and fall away. They come into being and don't necessarily have any existence of their own. Emotions in particular, you don't have to justify them or feel that they're, again, something you need to keep alive. But you can. You can do as that saying goes of throwing gas on a fire. If you have a good resentment or something you're angry about, that can feel, as we said, those negative ones can feel more energizing, and we kind of feel good about those. It's a little bit of that seeing ourselves as a victim we were talking about. We can see all the reasons that we're angry at people, or that we're angry at the world, that we're angry at ourselves, and so we don't have any control over our own lives. But here's something you can try when a good or bad or even a neutral feeling comes up. It can be difficult to deal with. In some ways we like the negative ones better. Some of us don't feel comfortable with the good feelings, and we have to find a negative one to replace them with quickly. But even those moments where we don't feel much of anything, as human beings, we don't like that neutral feeling either. Think of how much you dislike being bored. And if you were to be honest with yourself when you think, I need a break from myself, I want to get into a peaceful place in this meditation where I don't have thoughts, I don't have feelings. I don't know about you, but it would take about 1 minute before I'd start thinking, I don't like this so much. I'm going to have to come up with something to think about, or something to be angry about. Or I find so often it's those moments where you wake at 3 a.m. and you think, okay, I'm awake. What am I going to worry about now? Sometimes we think those worries are the thing that wakes us up. But I find sometimes the worries are the way we entertain ourselves when we do wake up, or the way we think we should be. So as we were talking about letting those thoughts arise and looking at them, holding them lightly, I think we can do the same with emotions. Because as we were saying at the beginning, it's risky to ignore them, push them down, try and talk ourselves into knowing why we shouldn't have them. And it's almost harder to just let them be there. I've heard someone describe it as like touch and release. You're aware of those emotions. Particularly in this practice, you'll find that emotions usually manifest in your body. If you're paying attention to your body, if you're feeling things with your body, you'll feel those emotions. That fear appears in the pit of your stomach. So many of them that we have almost like cliches about where you feel them, but there's a reason for that. There's a reason why when you feel courage, you feel it in your heart. There's a reason why you may feel anger in your throat, or as we were talking, that twitch in your eyelid. And you can learn to start identifying those so you can say that you're not in the dark anymore about how you're feeling. So many of us work at trying to identify our emotions, and we're surprised to realize we pay so little attention, we don't even know what they feel like. So that's one part of the touch and release. Being aware of those emotions, learning how they feel, learning that oftentimes, like the breath or like thoughts, they arise and they fall away. The way I often try and think of them, that is a way to realize they're important to us and they may have something to tell us or to teach us. We all know sometimes when we're afraid, sometimes those fears or anxieties just arise. They're not related to anything. But we may be with someone who makes us feel anxious or makes us feel fearful. And perhaps we're sensing something about them that we don't even know, that we aren't aware of with our thoughts, and we need to pay attention to those emotions. So an image I like to use that I'll offer to you. This is I think a perfect image for us in Minnesota here. Just about all of us have gone fishing. And I think not so much of touch and release those emotions as catch and release. I think back to my nephew who was a dedicated fisherman. We'd go up to his grandmother's cabin and he'd want to be out in the boat all day. And though he was quite young, I took him out and I learned something very important from him. He never kept a fish. He was a catch and release guy. But I'll always remember when he'd catch a big walleye and haul it in, he'd take it into the boat, bring it into his net and into the boat, and he'd hold on to it for a moment to kind of feel it and to calm it. He'd very carefully take that hook out, not just tearing it out. He was respecting that fish and the life of the fish. He'd take that hook out, again, not for too long, knowing that it needs to get back into the water. But he'd hold it again for a moment in his hands And he was always very careful to put it in the side of the boat, into the water. And not everyone does this, to take it and move it back and forth. Another way to honor it and respect it, to get the water moving through its gills and then let it take off. And he was so respectful of it, you could almost imagine that he was bowing and thanking that fish as it swam away too. And I think we can do that with our emotions and our feelings. Not just touch, but we can hold them lightly. Honor them for being something that is there to teach us, that is a part of ourselves, that has kind of come, one might say, from out of the depths. Just like those walleyes came from deep in a corner of the lake, huddled around a snag in the water. And our feelings come up out of the depths of ourselves too. And let us see a little something about ourselves. And there's something that's beautiful about them. Even a catfish, there's something beautiful and interesting about it. And surprising. I remember fishing with my son and catching a large catfish, and I had no idea at that time what catfish could do. It opened its mouth and started making this noise. And I thought, what, am I in that fairy tale where the person catches the fish that talks to them? I learned later they're able to stretch their spines and make these sounds. But at the time I thought, this is a magic fish that's speaking to me. Maybe if I let it go, it's going to grant me some wishes. And perhaps you can think of your emotions that way. There's something I can learn. There's something they can teach me. They arise from the depths, and I can let them go back into the depths. Let them go free. And see if perhaps there isn't some gift or some wish that they grant me. So try that when you're troubled by some angry thoughts, some depression or anxiety. Or you may find it's even interesting in a way to try with happy thoughts. I mean, some of us are so uncomfortable with happy thoughts, we try to get rid of them right away. But the other thing many of us do is we try and hang on to those happy thoughts. We want them to last forever. We want the feeling that they bring us, which again would be like keeping that fish in the boat without even putting it in a bucket or returning it to the water. It's our hanging on that's the thing that kills our happy feelings the fastest. So if you have something that comes up this week, just try that on it and see what your experience is. Bring it back here next week and we'll share some of what we found. In the meantime, you can take 3 deep breaths, releasing each one of those breaths like a fish back into the water. In and out. In and out. And in